At the risk of repeating myself, Echo on Disney Plus is just pointless, boring, stupid trash. And much like the Marvels, the only reason it really even exists is to push representation and diversity. I'm going to go ahead and split my review of Echo into 2 videos. The first one will just be a review of how well Echo functions as an entertaining show. The follow-up will be a discussion of how Echo perfectly encapsulates everything I and others have been saying about the state of modern Hollywood. Stick around and we'll discuss the newest fresh hell Disney has served up. See you on the other side. Echo begins with Maya Lopez and her family in Tehama, Oklahoma. Both Maya and her mother are deaf, so the entire family sign back and forth to each other. While having a sleepover with her cousin Bonnie, it begins raining and the girls come inside and ask for hot chocolate. They're out of ingredients, so Maya and her mom hop in the truck and head to the store. While on the way, Maya's mom realizes the brakes are out and immediately gets T-boned by another vehicle. Maya's mom, Taloa, is instantly killed, but Maya lives, though she loses her lower right leg. The truck had been tampered with because of Maya's father William's criminal relationships, and his mother-in-law can't forgive him and wants nothing to do with him ever again. He moves he and Maya to New York, where he works more directly with Kingpin, who becomes sort of a de facto uncle to Maya. When Maya is a young adult, her father is killed and Maya begins her work as an assassin for Kingpin. Only after being defeated by Hawkeye as Ronin does she learn that Kingpin wanted her father dead, so in response, Maya shoots Kingpin point blank in the face. And then she heads to Oklahoma, and almost nothing else happens. The end. No, seriously, that's about it as far as meaningful story. She goes back home, hatches a scheme to blow up Kingpin's warehouse in New York with a rail car that's conveniently located in Bumfuck, Oklahoma, which happens to be her hometown, and she runs around avoiding and finally seeing family members she hasn't seen in 20 years. The season wraps up and we learn that Kingpin isn't dead, despite having been shot by his own assassin from 3 feet away, directly in the face. Come to think of it, I'm not even sure he lost an eye. He comes to talk her into returning with him to New York, and after finally realizing that maybe he's been the bad guy all along, she refuses. He takes it about as well as you'd expect and kidnaps her grandmother and cousin. It all ends in a battle royale during a big Choctaw powwow with Kingpin and a couple dozen fully armed bodyguards on one side and Maya, her elderly grandmother, and her thick cousin on the other. The trio of women team up to beat the ever-living shit out of all of Kingpin's goons using what can only be described as American Indian Girl magic. Kingpin then runs away back to New York with what looks like plans to run for mayor of New York, which would actually be an upgrade at this point. This final fight scene was so stupid that when I described it to my wife over dinner, she said, quote, "I'm glad I didn't have to sleep through that," alluding to her having fallen asleep midway through episode 2. And that's it. That's Echo. I almost feel like I have to apologize for being a broken record here, but what the fuck, Disney? This is a terrible show. It's just awful. From the writing, to the pacing, to the CGI, to the acting, I'm not even sure where to begin with this thing. Because the showrunner found Maya's abilities in the comics lame, her words not mine, she was completely reworked here. I'll go into more depth in the follow-up video, but for now, this change meant that they needed to introduce a magical aspect to account for her powers. They do that here by introducing the origin of the Choctaw people, but they do it so poorly that the viewer has no idea what's happening. Are they aliens? Are they in the center of the earth? Were they human, or did they become human when they jumped through the little volcano thingy in the cave? Who knows? And this new aspect of her being spoken to by her ancestors means that every episode begins with a look back at a woman from Maya's lineage who fought the patriarchy and was super awesome. The first is Chafa from the first episode, who saved her people from the mud cave thing. The second is Loak, who was a 13th century kick-ass lacrosse player who, let's be honest, had moves that made Barry Sanders look like some kind of scrub. The third was Tuklo, a sharpshooter that gets to shoot a bunch of bad white guys after being told that women are life givers, not life takers, by some man.
How dare you!
Finally, her mother, Taloa, who had healing powers. There are snippets of an interesting story here in the beginning, but very few things ever get explained. It's just bad storytelling if you expect a viewer to have done a whole bunch of homework to follow your jumbled mess of a plot. We assume Maya's dad works for Kingpin, though we never see them interact. We have no clue who he is or what he does because the writers have never shown us. It's why when we see young Maya, who is adorable by the way, have conversations with her dad about how he wants her to have a different life than him, they hold no emotional weight. We don't know what kind of life he has. It's why when he gets killed, we don't care, so we don't feel any loss on Maya's behalf. In typical girl boss fashion, we get no time watching her gain her skill set. We go from a little girl starting karate to kicking a willing stuntman's ass. Remember, this version has no powers that we know of yet. She's just a great fighter, despite us never being shown how she got so good. Compare that to, say, Bruce Wayne in Batman Begins, for instance. Very little time is spent fleshing out her dad's death, Maya becoming an aimless delinquent, and then Kingpin turning her into a full-fledged killer. Look, this is all poorly executed here, but at least there's something happening. This series would have been infinitely better if the entire thing just stayed in New York and the first episode had been spread out as the whole season. On her first outing, she murders a bunch of willing stunt guys and then fights Daredevil, who had been watching the warehouse. I'm sure most of you saw the leaked footage, and yeah, it's exactly the same. And that's all there is. He never comes back. His entire role here is to try and convince you that she's every bit as good at fighting as he is. Fisk even tells her that none of his guys have ever stood their ground with him the way she did. But the fight scene is atrocious. It's so obviously choreographed, it looks like a dance. There are so many awkward pauses and fake hits, and whatever the hell Daredevil's doing here. But the best is Maya taking a shot at him with a shotgun from 5 feet away and missing. And then you realize, well, yeah, she's pointing the gun 4 feet away to his left. So yeah, she missed. Instead of seeing how terrible that looked in camera and shooting it again so it didn't look so awful, they just said, "Fuck it!" and moved on. What I said earlier is true. Once Maya returns to Oklahoma, only one thing really happens, and that's the train scheme that takes place in episode 2. After that, we're basically just waiting around for Kingpin to show up and we can have a finale. The rest is just filler, which will be better discussed in my part 2 of the Echo review, because it really only exists to push representation and diversity. As for acting, outside of Graham Greene, who's always been great in everything he's been in, and Vincent D'Onofrio, who likewise has always elevated everything he's in, the acting is wooden at best. The problem is this is driven by the lead Alaqua Cox as Maya, who just doesn't give any sort of compelling performance here. And this isn't a deaf issue either. Plenty of deaf actors have been able to convey emotion on screen. Cox never really does that here, and since she's carrying the show, it all runs downhill from there. She spends most of her time on screen scowling or just staring expressionless. She gives you nothing to root for and kind of makes Brie Larson seem charismatic.
Is that like a personal attack or something? Or...
Finally, I realize this is a Disney Plus show, but given how much money She-Hulk pissed away per episode, there is really no excuse for why the CGI is so terrible in spots here. Part of it is a continuing over-reliance on CGI even when it's not necessary. Like here, it's obvious everything around them is fake. That needs to stop. But I'm not sure why this looks so bad. Obviously, the little girl playing young Maya had her right leg earlier, so this is CGI. But look at the bandage and the bed. It's so obvious they're not touching, which can't happen there because it's the only thing the viewer is going to look at in that scene. We all saw the shard of glass in her leg in the wreck, which, by the way, makes no sense, and all eyes were going to be drawn to her missing leg. Despite that, it looks far worse than the effects used back in the early 90s on Forrest Gump, for fuck's sake. And don't get me started on all the train nonsense. Viewers expect more at this point, and have seen so much better and can tell when real sets are used. So yeah, wow. Echo was a boring waste of time from start to finish. I had avoided most Disney Plus shows up to this point because I had no interest in them and I thought I'd hate them all, and that seems to have been a wise move. But you guys have asked that I talk about more of these, so I'll be taking more of these for the team and watching them so you don't have to.
Don't everybody thank me at once.
Wish me luck in 2024. Until next time, thanks for watching.